What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and every Tuesday night I put together my rest of season rankings where I am not ranking players for strictly week 9. I am not ranking players based on what they've done in the past, but just strictly moving forward from now through week 17. How do I feel about these players? And every week there are breakouts or injuries, and there's a lot of movement in these rankings. So today I'm going to tell you about these 7 players skyrocketing up my rest of season rankings in week 9 of the fantasy football season. If you enjoy this video, leave a like, subscribe if you're new. It helps us a ton. Now, let's get into our first player skyrocketing my rankings. Now, how this is going to work, and really what I will say too, is we've covered Tyrone Tracy on 10 lessons. We talked about him on the waiver wire report. And the reason why I like this video so much is because it's one thing for me to say, oh, well, Tyrone Tracy will be a fringe RB2 moving forward or a fringe RB3. And you can throw these things out, but when you have to sit down and put pen to paper and make these rankings, it's genuinely a painstaking process. Like, I do pride myself on these being rankings I care about, right? I've had people tell, like, my little brother will sometimes come over my shoulder and be like, can't you just, like, there's no way that this is going to take you 2 hours. Like, you're just ranking these players. Like, does the RB44 versus the RB45 really matter that much? And it's like, not really, but I do really care about these rankings being good and useful for you guys, and I really do care every week. Like, I genuinely look at every week as a blank slate moving forward. So if you do want access to those rankings, you can find them over on the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. You get my rest of season rankings. Tomorrow you'll get my weekly rankings, which is going to be the week 9 rankings, waiver wire article. I'll update the rankings again by the time we get to Sunday. All that good stuff and more is over on the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. But it's why I like this video so much, because I can kind of come to you guys with my more concrete thoughts than just me sort of jotting notes down on Monday and then telling you go pick up Tyrone Tracy on Tuesday. Now I can tell you that I moved up Tyrone Tracy 29 spots from my RB50 to my RB21. Now, this is a graphic I've already showed you, or a tweet I've already showed you from Ryan Heath. He's a great follow over on Twitter. But Cam Skadabo suffered his career-ending injury, which sucks so bad. Tyrone Tracy, after Skadabo left the game, got 7 of 9 carries. He got the only carry inside the 10-yard line, 11.8% target share, fringe top 24 running back rest of season, and I kind of concur with that. I was looking at it. I like Tyrone Tracy as my RB21. I think a decent gauge of how to feel about these players moving forward is, and as like, I wouldn't call it a cop-out, but as simple as it sounds, just looking at like the consensus rankings on Fantasy Pros of the consensus of 22 experts, where do they have Tyrone Tracy this week? RB16 versus San Francisco. So I'm actually lower than his weekly ranking, but it's good to look at how are these players viewed now in a 1-week window. And we can kind of tell, without Skadabo, Tyrone Tracy is going to be a top 24 start every week. So for me, he is my RB21. And I think that there's also some, it's not strictly volume, because we had Tyrone Tracy in this exact role last year. He was the RB16 from week 5 on, but there's actually a little bit more to be excited about, because this offensive environment is better than it was last year, right? If we just look at how many points the Giants are expected for this week, they're expected for the 18th most points, 23 points, 2.5-point favorites versus the 49ers, where last year they were the 28th ranked EPA per play offense. That is awful. That is a bottom 5 offense. This year, they're 16th. And yes, some of that's from Skadabo, but really most of it is from Jackson Dart and improved offensive line play with Andrew Thomas back healthy. This Giants offensive line is the 16th best run block win rate unit by ESPN. So you now have a league average offensive line, a league average offense, and that environment with Tracy's role, he played receiver in college, is really strong. I will say he always had a good profile on paper, right? Pass catching upside because of the receiving background. Second-year running back. He flashed in year 1. My take was always just I liked Skadabo better, and that played out well because Skadabo is a bigger back. He is better on the goal line, as good of a receiving threat, but Tyrone Tracy is no scrub. Like, he is very much a locked and loaded top 24 running back. If you got him off waivers, if you had him on your bench, you should feel really good about him rest of season. Now, another running back skyrocketing up my rankings, Kamani Vidal. I moved him up 11 spots from my RB37 to my RB26, and it's always weird ranking these kinds of players, right? He is essentially a rental, right? We are waiting for Amarian Hampton to return, but his timeline has been really weird. You have to remember, too, when these teams have playoff hopes, they're not as inclined to rush some of these guys back, right? Like, if the Chargers are going to make the playoffs, if Kamani Vidal is playing fine, there's no reason to rush him back and re-injure anything. Now, Jeff Mueller here on Twitter, I think, is one of the better injury docs out there. He said, still think Week 13 is most likely for Marion Hampton, but I still get the sense that we haven't gotten key details. Is there a fracture? Is there a tendon injury? Is there surgery? So Week 13 is the expectation. I believe they have a Week 12 bye, right? So now we get Week 9, Week 10, Week 11 for Kamani Vidal minimum. And then on the other side of that bye, if Hampton's not ready to go, it should be more Kamani Vidal. So, again, it's tough to gauge, right, at this point in the year, how much do you value 3 games of, if we look at the consensus rankings again, Kamani Vidal is the RB12 this week. Now, of course, it's the Tennessee Titans, but he has been really good. How do you value a fringe RB1 over the next 3 weeks, and then the opportunity for more after the bye week if Hampton has any complications? It's tough. For me, RB26 sounds about right. He should be really, really good this week. And this is somebody, since taking over in Week 6, has been the RB10 in points per game at 16.7 points per game. He is a free space RB2 at worst until Hampton's back. And if we look at how good he's actually been really good. Like, it's not even just the role, right? It's not even just, okay, well, Hampton's hurt and Vidal is filled in. It's that he's actually been pretty good. Now, it's important to remember they have gotten Joe Alt back in the mix. Really good left tackle. But some of these stats are flawed, right? Like, I don't love rushing yards over expected per attempt, but he is second in that metric. He's third in explosive run rate, which I like much better, and sixth in yards per carry, which is very simple, but 5.2 yards per carry is 5.2 yards per carry. He's been great as a big play runner. I will say some of his more success rate, down-to-down type of metrics in terms of stuff rate or success rate aren't as good, but he is this big play runner, which I think is a really awesome thing for Kamani Vidal, who looked like an absolute zero just a year ago. And then you pair that with his really good usage. We look at the My Fantasy Life Utilization Report, which is a really good tool. I believe Dwayne McFarland kind of runs it over there. And we can see, in terms of running backs over the last 3 weeks, to have a 80-plus utilization score, so that UR score takes into account, your snaps, your rush attempt share, your route share, your target percentage, all of that, and it spits out a utilization score. He, over the last 3 weeks, is in a cohort of running backs of McCaffrey, Bijan, Achane, Jonathan Taylor, Javonte, Josh Jacobs, Jahmyr Gibbs. Those are essentially the top 7 or so best running backs in fantasy football. I guess, like, not including like Saquon and James Cook. But it's a really good list. So the opportunity is there. He's been efficient. This Chargers offense is good. So I think that you can value him pretty highly. And we're going to do a trade target video tomorrow. He might even be a buy for me, man. If somebody's like, oh, well, Kamani Vidal's a flash in the pan, dude. If you need production right now and you just want like a RB2 for higher for the next 3 to 6 weeks, I think Kamani Vidal is actually a really strong play. Then we can talk about Rondé Gadsden, another one of these guys where we talk about him on 10 lessons and we're like, this guy's amazing. He's a fringe, he's a top 12 tight end moving forward. How do I feel about him? He's my tight end 7 right now. It's really close between him. It's really tough. So the top 6 for me in no order, McBride, Kraft, Ferguson, Bowers, Kittle, Warren. Those are the 6. I don't know why I struggled on Warren. Those are the 6. You could talk me into Gadsden over Ferguson. You could talk me into him over Bowers if you're not crazy about his injury. I think the guys that are shoo-ins ahead of Gadsden are McBride, Warren, Kraft. After that, you can start making the case for Gadsden. But for me, I have him tight end 7. I moved him up 4 spots from last week. He's just an absolute monster, man. Like, in terms of rookie tight ends, PPR points through 6 games, he's behind Jordan Reed, who, if you don't remember, Jordan Reed was a monster as a rookie. Jordan Reed, Tyler Warren, Kyle Pitts, Brock Bowers, Sam Laporta. Some of the best rookie tight end seasons we've seen in a while. And then you can also see his usage. Like, it's not just like fluky touchdowns or low route shares. When we look at the utilization report, it's really strong that he's at an 81% route share over his last 3 games. This is over the last 3 weeks. He has the second best utilization score, and him and McBride are the only guys over a 90 utilization score. And that's really the only knock on Kraft, is that his utilization isn't amazing, right? Like, he has a 4.4 yard ADOT on like a 21% target share on 81% of the routes isn't great, but Gadsden, 9.3 yard ADOT. So he's getting used downfield more than any of these other tight ends on this list. 20% target share, 80% plus route share, all really, really strong for Gadsden. So the usage is there, the role is there, the production is there. Over the last 3 weeks, he's been at 20 plus points per game. There's really nothing else I can say about Gadsden. We look at the rookie receiver report here. Gadsden compared to some of the big dogs like Ibuka and Tedero McMillan, 18.7% targets per out run, 2.25 yards per out run is amazing. He's behind only Tet with 9.4% first downs per out run. He's the only rookie receiver right now at 80-plus PFF grades, so I think he's the real deal. I think he's the next Darren Waller, and I think he's the tight end 7 until further notice, with honestly room to get into the top 5 this season. Now, this is the part of the video where we're going to take a small break from the risers, and I do want to give you guys the Monday night rookie receiver report. Really nothing to note. Jalen Lane's at the top here. I meant to actually highlight him as well here, but he goes from 34% to 75%, back down to 46% of the routes this week. He's just not, there's really nothing to see here. He's kind of getting lapped by, like, Debo's back in the mix, McLaurin's back in the mix. They like the guys like Chris Moore and Luke McCaffrey a bit, so he's just kind of a name at this point. And then we can also talk about the rookie running back carousel. You have Bill Krosky-Merritt, and you have Brashard Smith. Now, Bill is tough. His snap share above 50% for 3 weeks in a row now is really good, but his efficiency's been bad. He's been like under 3 yards per carry in his last 2 games, which is where he's going to need to eat. He's going to need efficiency and touchdowns. They didn't have Laramie Tunsil. Kansas City's run defense is pretty dang good. It was a bad game start without Jaden Daniels. I hate to kind of make all these excuses, but I think that we're kind of off base here with kind of our thoughts on Bill. And honestly, while we're talking about this, I might as well tell you guys where I moved Bill in the rankings. We're kind of all over the place here, but this is like a fine skyrocketing style video. We moved Bill from... Did I even move him down? No. I have him right now as my RB27. He's my RB27. That is actually, I had him at RB28 last week, so I moved him up 1. That might have just been because of an injury, but still, he's like a high-end RB3 for me. But the whole idea behind Bill was that we'd get a healthy Jaden Daniels and a good Washington Commanders offense. If we have those things, then I think Bill can eat on this usage in terms of just being efficient, being like a cog in this really good offense. But with Jaden Daniels banged up, it's just been a really rough go. And then Brashard Smith is weird. The week against the Raiders, the game script was so bad and the game was out of hand that Brashard Smith had like 19 opportunities. In this game, Pacheco gets hurt, and they beat up on Washington, and his snap share goes back down to 14%, and it was his first game without a target since week 1. So Brashard Smith gets downgraded, but I still like him as a stash moving forward. I think we got over our skis making him a sneaky start last week. You got to keep him out of your lineup for now, but with Pacheco banged up down the stretch of the season, I still have hope for Brashard Smith, but he's purely just a bench stash that you could drop if you'd like to. Right now, Brashard Smith is I moved him from RB45 to RB48 this week, so he's just barely hanging on. I only rank my top 50 running backs in a given week. Now, moving on to our 4th player, skyrocketing up the rankings, we have Michael Pittman. He goes from my wide receiver 32 to my wide receiver 23, up 9 spots. And I have to stop playing this game of yo-yo with Pittman because he is somebody that, as a spreadsheets guy and a numbers guy, he's so tough to wrap your head around when you look at usage, right? So the fantasy points data chart here is the actual fantasy points per game versus your expected fantasy points per game. Expected is your volume, actual is your production. And when I draw that line at 15 plus points per game, he by far has the lowest volume. But the Colts offense is so damn good, it doesn't really matter. And on a per route basis, he's been really good in terms of first downs per out run. He's behind only JSN, Puka Nacua, and Amon-Ra St. Brown on first downs per out run. And you can say, oh, well, regression is coming for him, right? Like the volume isn't matching the production. But again, he's in the best offense. So the way that he's out producing is strictly off touchdowns. He has 6 touchdowns and only 3.3 expected touchdowns. But again, overshooting your touchdowns on a good offense happens. Like Pittman, to me, actually feels a lot like Terry McLaurin of last year, where the touchdowns just felt unsustainable, but he's going to continue to score them. And Pittman could easily end the year with like 12 receiving touchdowns as a top 24 wide receiver. And right now he's tracking to be one of the best like cost-adjusted picks. This is from the BBM Advanced Rate Leaderboard on @BB-Data-Muse. And you can see he has behind JT, Pickens, and Javonte, he has been the 4th best pick in all of – this is best ball data, but I think it's applicable to normal fantasy football as well. And somebody else, I just put in perspective, so Pittman has 6 touchdowns on 3.3 expected. Amon-Ra St. Brown has 7 touchdowns on only 4.1 expected, and no one's calling for regression. The Lions and the Colts offenses are pretty comparable right now, as funny as it is to say, but we're through 8 weeks. The Colts offense hasn't slowed down. So I don't think there's any reason to think that like Pittman's touchdowns are going to go to 0. We're going to look back at this year. Pittman's going to be like the wide receiver 33 in expected points per game, and he's going to finish as like the wide receiver 20 in points per game, and that's just how it's going to go. We'll also talk about Chase Brown here as a skyrocketing player. Now, this is why I like this video, because on the Monday video for lessons, I was saying I think Chase Brown might be a sell high, right? Because his usage hasn't been great, and it hasn't been great. We look over the last 3 weeks. We look at his utilization score. We're talking 52, 68, 74 on like 50 to 60% of the snaps, not running a ton of routes, but it doesn't really matter as much because if you remember back to what Chase Brown was as a fantasy pick this year, it was a really, really nice role in a really, really good offense, and we had RB1 in points per game in terms of like top 12 point per game at running back type of expectations. Well, we're now through 8 weeks of the season. It's been brutal for Chase Brown, but the expectations have changed. So now the offense is better. The usage is worse than we wanted it to be, but that's still going to meet somewhere in the middle as an RB2 moving forward, where I moved him from RB27 to RB18, 9 spots up the rankings. And as crazy as it sounds to say, like, because of Joe Flacco, it kind of is because of Joe Flacco. We have over the last 3 weeks, Flacco has been, in terms of like the Bengals offense, they've been 4th in EPA per play and 2nd in success rate. Before then with Browning, they were bottom 5 in both of those metrics. Now, I don't think that this is going to last for the entire year. Like, I'm not now saying the Bengals are going to be a top 5 offense rest of season, but I think like league average sounds about right. And if they can be league average with some explosive games, that should be enough for Chase Brown to be an RB2 on this usage. And their rest of season schedule in terms of defenses isn't that great. They actually got very lucky for fantasy football purposes where the Cleveland Browns are their week 18 matchup. So you don't have to worry about the Cleveland Browns again. And then I do actually want to pull up the defenses in terms of EPA per play. This is their next schedule. They have Chicago, and then they have a bye week, and then they have Pittsburgh, New England, Baltimore, Buffalo, Baltimore again. And if we look at where these teams rank, we have Chicago, which ranks 19th in terms of EPA per play defense. Steelers rank 25th. New England's a good defense. They rank 5th. But then you have Buffalo, who's 13th. You have Baltimore, who is 30th. Then you have Miami, who's 27th. Then you have you actually had Baltimore twice in there, which Baltimore again is 30th, and then Arizona at 20th. So I think the only good defenses are really Buffalo at 13th and New England at 5th. All the other defenses aren't good at all. So the Bengals like rest of season schedule is pretty solid. I do anticipate the Joe Flacco magic running out at some point, but I think for now you just kind of enjoy the ride and take advantage of these bad defenses, especially with Chicago and Pittsburgh as the next 2 on the docket. Now after that, this is another one where we kind of jotted him down in the waiver wire video. People ask, like, what's your expectation for Christian Watson? Here's what I'll say. I imagine you guys probably care about where do I have Christian Watson rest of season, because he's one of the hot topics right now as a big-time waiver wire ad. I'd slow your roll a little bit. I moved him up 7 spots. So he was unranked, like wide receiver 60. I only ranked 60 wide receivers. So him being wide receiver 60 just means he was unranked previously. Now he's my wide receiver 53. It's nothing crazy. It's just like a flex option. But here's what I'll say is, honestly, I just wouldn't get carried away with any Packers wide receiver at this point. Dobbs will stay at the top of the totem pole, but Reed's going to be back in the mix. Dontavion Wicks is going to be back in the mix. And I just think that Matthew Golden hasn't showed enough to be a full-time wide receiver. And then I think Christian Watson working back from this ACL, they're not going to be in a rush when LaFleur has never been a guy to have his top wide receivers run a ton of routes. Like, he loves this rotation of like everyone stay around 70% of the routes. And if that's going to happen, these guys aren't really startable in fantasy on a consistent basis. And I think with Golden not really showing to be, like, Golden looks fine, but he's not a special talent, right? He's not Ibuka. He's not Tedero McMillan. He's not one of those guys. He's going to be, maybe he'll be, in the long term, he'll be something fine, but he has not done well enough to warrant 90% plus of the routes. I don't think they're going to be in a rush with Watson when they didn't do it when he was healthy. Now he's back from the ACL. Then you're going to get Reed back in the mix. You're going to get Wicks back in the mix. I just think this is going to be a passing offense that runs through Tucker Kraft, and then all the wide receivers are kind of ancillary pieces. So I wouldn't get too high on Watson or too high on Golden. These guys are going to have their weeks, right? They're going to make big plays. They're going to score a touchdown. But until the routes back the production, I wouldn't get too crazy about any of them. And that also brings me to Tucker Kraft. He's the one I would get crazy about. I moved him from tight end 6 to tight end 2. If you want to move him to tight end 1, you absolutely can. So far, McBride has gotten better usage if we look at their actual fantasy points per route run versus expected fantasy points per route run. In terms of volume, Tucker Kraft is actually right. He's like the Michael Pittman of tight ends in terms of his usage isn't great. Like his volume's not amazing, but he's just been so above and beyond the best tight end that it's hard to not get carried away. Now, again, Trey McBride has gotten really good usage. I can't really find him on this chart. Oh, no. Yeah, you can see him on this chart. He is he's right next to Cortland Sutton, Trey McBride, as getting better volume than Tucker Kraft, but he's right on the dotted line, whereas Tucker Kraft is just an absolute monster. You're nitpicking, deciding between McBride and Kraft. I think there is warrant to the idea that, yes, Kraft's volume is low, but McBride now with Kyler Murray back gets a downgrade, so you can absolutely put Kraft at tight end 1 if you want to moving forward. He's the tight end 1 in points per game. In terms of his efficiency, it's insane too. Even just tracking wide receivers and tight ends, because he leads tight ends in everything. So if you add wide receivers to the mix, among 87 wide receivers and tight ends with 150 or more routes run, he is third in yards per route run behind JSN and Puka, but ahead of Amon-Ra St. Brown and CeeDee Lamb at 2.71. He leads all receivers in yards after catch per reception at 11 yards, 0.1 per reception in terms of yak. He's fifth in missed tackles forced per reception, and he's behind only 6 wide receivers with 16.2 points per game. He's an absolute monster. He's kind of defying the volume. If we look at that chart from Gadsden, I think here, you can see like Kraft at 83 is, below McBride, below Gadsden, below even a guy like Goddard, where he's running 81% of the routes, 21% target share, 4.4 yard ADOT, but if you're going to get 11 yards after the catch every single time, then, it's insane. Having a 4-yard ADOT, but then turning in like 15 yards per reception, it's unfathomable for a tight end. And if he's a monster this week, or if he outscores McBride and Kyler comes back and it really hurts McBride, then I'll be moving Kraft to my tight end 1 moving forward. But that's going to do it for us today. That is our skyrocketing video for the week. If you want access to the rest of season rankings, you can find them over on the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart, in the description or the comment section down below. But if you can't support there, just leave a like on the video, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you guys in the next one. This is VVS stones, like this froze, ice cold, ice around my body like